Welcome back to Session 3, where we're going to be discuss pricing. Pricing is very different from costing, and the most important thing we need to remember is that cost does not equal price. Through our grants and government contractual agreements, we've become conditioned to marry the price that the government is willing to pay as our cost of delivering service. But this is not the case. And while we may have limited influence in what price we can charge for many of our services, government contributions and our clients' ability to pay, we do need to know what our full options are so that we can make informed decisions to the price in ways that maximise our opportunity to be sustainable. So what are our pricing options? Let's have a look at slide 26, pricing strategies. Our most familiar pricing strategy is funding agency contribution pricing, and the hint is in the name, contribution. Price setting to gain best value for money is a recognised feature of many state and federal funding bodies. For example, the services performed by the medical profession and funded by Medibank, allied health services performed by professionals but funded by WorkCover. The supplier cost factors taken into account by the funding agency when determining price is often usually limited. Generally, the price that the funding agencies present does not meet the full cost of the particular service output, and in many cases the price is merely a contribution, sometimes a substantial contribution, but the organisation has to fund the residual, and this is what they mean by community co-contribution. The Productivity Commission 2010 report estimated that the overall proportion of costs met by government funding was around 70%. Now, a second pricing option we have is cost plus or price markup. In cases where the organisation can set our price, this is the most common method of pricing. The full cost of service output is calculated and an extra small amount is added to produce our surplus. Normally this is a percentage of cost, and different percentages can apply for different service outputs. The advantage of cost plus pricing is that it's relatively generally understood, accepted and easy to apply. But our emerging challenge is preparing ourselves for competitive tender pricing. In most situations of government tendering amongst private companies, the price submitted to the government is based not only on cost, but also to the extent on which the organisation needs or wants to win the tender. The rationale behind this is that there are other benefits that flow on from securing the tendered contract. And this is particularly so in situations where organisation is the existing supplier of service outputs and hence already has invested infrastructure, staff and systems and is re-tendering. Sitting alongside of this is predatory or penetration pricing. In some cases, organisations put service outputs at below cost in order to drive out existing competitors in the short term, or create a barrier of entry to new organisations. Such organisations usually believe that secure penetration dominance will enable them to later increase their prices with little or no competition. And this is becoming a more and more common strategy amongst private organisations entering the not-for-profit world. So now let's look at cost versus price. Comparing our known true costs of a program with a multiple of pricing options allows us to make informed decisions on whether to cease, continue or grow our programs, and which programs will drive the viability and sustainability of our organisations. A really good example of this is in slide 34 and 35, where we're looking at one organisation and two sensitivity analysis for that organisation. This tool is available online and I highly recommend you download it. So let's start by looking at slide 34. And this is an organisation who in 2013 got a total net revenue of $370,000 with total expenses of $350,500. If you have a look at the top, we've got total revenue square 370,100 and total expenses at 100% 350,500. By propagating those two cells, the rest of the entire table then comes up. So in this situation, we know, therefore, that the revenue that is available for us to make is $19,600, and that is in bold, highlighted square in the middle of the chart. Now, what it also allows us to consider is how close to the red or how sensitive this program is to any fluctuation in expense or revenue. And as we can see, that 19,600 moves fairly quickly into a loss with only a 10% fluctuation in either income or expense. So while this is a viable program for an organisation at this point in time, we would have to question whether or not it's a sustainable one. So if we look over now to page 35, we can see the year later they have actually increased the revenue of the program through more users, more clients, more grants. At the same time, our expenses have gone up slightly because that's the nature of expenses, particularly when we're looking at the difference between fixed and variable costs. In this scenario, our fixed costs have remained the same, but our variable costs have increased to allow us to deliver the extra service hours. But look at the difference it makes in the chart. Again, we put in our total revenue is now $476,050 and our total expenses at $375,300. Yet, total surplus is now looking at $100,750 and we have far greater margin of error before we start moving into the red down in the far left corner. As I mentioned, this table is available within the resources for this module, and I really would recommend that you download it and use it as a way of playing around, once you know your known costs, with how far or how sensitive you are happy for a program to be in regards to the price charged. If we know what governments are willing to pay for any future grants or services that we may consider tendering for, and we put in our costs, we can actually look at this to see whether or not that government tender is actually a viable and sustainable program for our organisation to take on. In general scheme of things, we are not-for-profit organisations, and therefore we almost have a duty and purpose to have some programs which may sail a little close to the bone. But overall, government and our communities are looking for us to be viable and sustainable organisations. And to be able to successfully do that, we really need to be considering the viability and future sustainability of our organisations as whole. And if we have too many programs that are just going by without any surplus contributing towards the overheads of the organisation, we will find that not only are we not a sustainable organisation, we may not be viable and in some cases may not even be solvent.